knowing something is not the same thing as doing something. We know we should be going to bed at a reasonable time. We know there's a certain amount of water that when we drink it, we feel better. We know that moving our bodies is good for our mental and physical health. And yet, lots of us aren't necessarily great at doing those things. When it comes to making financial mistakes, what a lot of people do is they try and cram more knowledge into their brain, thinking if I know more things, then I'll make different choices. Instead, I think it's really important to think about why you made that financial choice in the first place and learn how to forgive yourself for those financial mistakes. In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the financial mistakes we make and what we can do instead of beating ourselves up or trying to consume more personal finance information to help us make wiser financial choices. Hey, I'm Lindsay. I'm a financial therapist and the founder of Mind Money Balance. Mind Money Balance is dedicated to helping you at the intersection of money and mental health so you can have a healthier relationship with your money. I have been talking about how to deal with financial anxiety for these past few episodes, and today we're talking about a big thing that comes up when dealing with financial anxiety, and it's how to address mistakes. In so much of the personal finance world, it is rooted in it's your fault you didn't have a budget, it's your fault you didn't have an emergency fund, why didn't you have a better credit score? But we don't actually talk about what to do when you've made a mistake. And fun fact, turns out shaming people for making mistakes doesn't actually make them any better at not making those mistakes again. Because behavior change is not about learning more and about feeling bad, it's about practicing. It's about getting comfortable and getting cozy, doing good enough when it comes to your finances. And trying things means you're bound to make a mistake. Some examples of financial mistakes I've seen include a person opening up a new bank account for the new bank account welcome bonus, but not realizing how high those overdraft fees were and getting dinged pretty frequently with a pretty high overdraft fee. Another example is enrolling in an employee-sponsored retirement plan, but not fully reading the details and putting away money every single month in their retirement plan, but they never actually invested that money. It was just sitting in a 401k and sitting in cash. Or thinking they could afford a house based on what a realtor told them after crunching the numbers. And while that realtor was more or less correct in terms of a monthly expense, they didn't factor in things like maintenance fees or that property taxes could keep going up even after they bought the house. None of these people are bad or wrong or dumb when it comes to money. They just made normal money-related mistakes. But with those normal money-related mistakes, they came with a lot of shame and embarrassment baggage, which is not super great for getting better, cultivating a healthy relationship with money. So if you make a financial mistake, hi, welcome to the world. You're going to make more mistakes, and that's perfectly okay. The difference between making a mistake and making meaning from a mistake is that when you make meaning from the mistake, you get curious about why you made that choice in the first place and can learn how to not repeat that same type of mistake moving forward. The first thing to think about if you've made a financial mistake is to ask yourself why, and not in a condescending way, but what might have led me here? What were some of the role models I had that led me to this type of choice? What were my thoughts, my feelings, my behaviors that were going on when I made this financial decision? If we can get curious about why you did what you did, we'll have a better idea of what led to that choice in the first place. It could have been a money story. If you decided to stay at a job, even though a recruiter had been reaching out to you and saying, hey, come on over here, the water's fine, we'd love to hire you, we'd love to give you more money, and you said, no, not really interested, and you lost out on a significant pay raise, it'd be easy to be like, oh, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I didn't take that job opportunity. But if we get curious about why you might have done that, maybe you were kind of coming of age during the Great Recession and you watched your parents both lose their jobs and both have their retirement savings slashed drastically. And being of a certain age and watching that happen, you might have made the association that having a steady, stable job is better than taking a risk. Even if it's not true, we can start to understand why you made that choice in the first place. Let's say you were kind of like the person who started putting away money for retirement. You're really proud of yourself for opening up that employee-sponsored 401k plan. And when you looked at it a few years later and realized that the money hadn't grown, even though you thought it was supposed to grow this magical 7 to 10% a year, you realized, oh shoot, I never actually chose an index fund or a target date fund to invest my money in. Now, why might a person do something like that? Not because they're dumb, not because they were moving too fast, but because maybe they grew up in a household where their parents didn't save or invest for retirement because they didn't have access to something like that or didn't have the type of financial literacy that told them how beneficial having something like that was. Then you can start to extend a little bit of forgiveness to yourself and say, you know what? I tried really hard. I'm really, really thankful that I set aside money every single month in a tax advantaged account. Now it's time to take that money and invest it so that way it can grow. I'm so thankful I looked at it now and not a few years away from retirement. We can start to look at why we did what we did, and instead of beating ourselves up for it, we can offer ourselves some compassion and forgiveness. So that's honoring where you came from. Another thing that can be super helpful when you've made a financial mistake is to know that you're not alone. And I'm not just talking about like in general, you're not alone, you've made mistakes, though that's probably helpful. I'm talking about talking to your friends, talking to your family, or finding an online community of people who've made similar mistakes or come from similar backgrounds or work in a similar field who can help you understand that you are not alone in that type of financial mistake. One thing when we make money mistakes is we think that we are the only person on the planet who could have ever made that mistake and there's something terribly wrong with us, instead of acknowledging that most of us have made money mistakes, and having to carry that sadness for the mistake that you made by yourself is really hard and really isolating. So let's say you maybe got into gambling. Maybe around the Super Bowl, you downloaded a few of those sports betting apps. You like sports, you figured a free $20 to gamble wouldn't be the end of the world, and so you gambled a little bit. And while you wouldn't say you've developed a full-blown gambling problem, you lost a few $100s. You've decided to delete those apps from your phone and start figuring it out, but you can't stop beating yourself up for the betting and gambling that you've done. Well, you can turn to other people online where you can see that you're not alone in having made that mistake. There's something really powerful about having social recognition of the pain that we're experiencing to help us move through shame. So we've honored where we came from, we've connected with others. Now it's time to make meaning of that mistake by educating yourself on what you can do differently next time. This isn't about going back in time and beating yourself up for what you did or didn't do. Instead, this is saying, now I know why I did it. Now I've got other people in my corner. Now I can learn from that mistake and ensure that I don't make a similar type of mistake again. Let's say you were like one of the people who bought a house and realized that you were in over your head. You sold the house, kind of got out while you were okay. One way to prevent yourself from getting into another situation like that would be when a realtor tells you, hey, here's how much house you can afford. You can pause, go home, crunch your numbers yourself, and add a nice buffer in there to see how much you can really afford. A lot of banks and mortgages will approve you for a much larger loan than you can safely afford to pay back. So you should crunch the numbers and make sure that when you're including that monthly mortgage, things like your house insurance, your property taxes, and the mortgage in and of itself, make sure that that number is 28% or less of your monthly take home to ensure that you don't get into a situation where all of your money is going towards your housing expenses. Other ways to get educated about the mistake that you made is to maybe expose yourself to other types of financial content. Maybe you've been listening to a style of podcast for a really long time that focuses on, say, real estate investing. Maybe you want to broaden your horizons and think about podcasts who are open to other types of investing, like community investing or index fund investing. Maybe you have been spending a lot of time reading books about budgeting. Maybe it's time to now kind of branch out beyond budgeting and start thinking about how to actually spend money in alignment with your values. So there are different things that we can do to educate ourselves around the mistakes that we've made so that we can learn from them and make some modifications moving forward. If you're struggling with adhering to a dollar-based budget, it can be helpful to do a frequency-based budget instead. What I mean by that is most people do budgets based on dollars and cents because it's a financial document. I have $300 every month that I can spend dining out. Well, that might work, but it's really hard to literally track that $300. So instead of saying, I went out, it was $50, I'm going to put it in my phone and remember that the next time I go out that I now only have $250 to spend for the rest of the month, maybe that's too complicated and too hard to track. Maybe you give yourself a frequency-based limitation instead. That might look like I'm allowed to go out to eat once per week. Instead of saying I'm allowed to spend $200 on getting my hair done, maybe you say I'm allowed to get my hair done once a quarter. That's much easier to do mental accounting of and to stick to, and most likely you'll be able to dial back your spending without it being way too tricky for you. Again, that's something much easier to track than to try and remember how many dollars went in and out for a different line item on your budget. More than anything, what I hope that this shared with you is that you're not alone in making money mistakes. Making money mistakes is a part of the process. If you try to go in to improving your relationship with money or improving specific things about money, maybe your monthly budget or your retirement accounts, or making sure that you have some life planning set up, if you go in thinking you're never going to make a mistake, when you inevitably make that mistake, it's going to land really hard for you, and it might be a bit more challenging for you to move through that financial mistake. Instead, honor where you came from, figure out the patterns that led to that type of behavior, find other people in your corner who you can talk to about it, make meaning of the mistake, and know that you're on the journey. We're right here with you. You're not alone, and you are pretty darn resilient. I'll see you in the next video.